Hi, welcome everybody to tonight's virtual 2020 concert of the Lehighton Boys and Girls Band. It's a pleasure for me to be here again to say a few words. I'll try to keep this really brief. I might end up being too fast here, so I keep it nice and short. So these slides will be available to you on a link. You can look through these at your own pleasure. I mean, I'm going to go rather fast. Lehighton has a strong history of tradition. It's in the culture of our town. We're so fortunate to have a group like Lehighton with the history and the dedicated people like Director Schock and all the board directors. I can't thank you enough. It means a lot to me when I see the band play, and it's a really important piece. And I'm glad we have this outlet for people to have their musical creativity in our town. So I'm so grateful to all of you and all the work and dedication and the blood and toil that you put in, the sweat and toil you put in. But you know, what would our town be without praise? Here's Lehighton band in the 40s with their capes, Director Frohnheiser. Here's Mel Hill in the 80s. There's my brother Rick and many others, Kim Howland, Paul Bortz. I played with all these guys. I was a little bit younger than them. Doug Edwards, etc. I want to keep moving here. My Uncle Bill down on right in front of the old band shell, which became the new band shell, new municipal building. I own this drum here. Probably the reason why I became a drummer. Everybody else in my family was a trumpet player, but I really was a very reluctant student, as you'll see later. But you know, again, the town just has a strong tradition. I have a bunch of old pictures here of the Lehighton Men's Band, 1864, and how we won parade things, etc., etc. There's First Street. I'm just going to fly through here. Chester Walk and his hi-hatters. And the point I want to make here is the band trained so many musicians in popular and important nationally known bands. The Dorsey Brothers, you name it. Everybody seemed to have a band, and some made it and some didn't. So a lot of our players, you'll see here, another group, the Patriotic Sons of America. There's Bethany Church, etc. Taking place band hall. Another Muddy Day parade. You know, we owe the start of the band to James Blakslee, who was the great nephew of Asa Packer and his wife Sarah Blakslee. She was a Blakslee by maiden name. He funded the group, and imagine what it cost, you know, to start with the instruments and the uniforms and everything else. With and without hats. There's James Blakslee there. And that picture hung in the hall. I assume it's still hanging there. He just dominated and looked over us and made sure that we fulfilled the mission of having a community band. But anyway, early director came here from, he was born in Finland, J.R. Kulti. This is his son, Carl. And you can see that Carl became a musician of renown, was a Juilliard trained musician. A lot of these early directors, they made their own compositions that we still played. I remember the Boys Band March was one of the marches that we played back in the 70s and 80s, and heritage of our town. But really, this is what Kulti was quoted in the paper. Says right here, was remember the nationally famous Lehighton Boys and Girls Band. At that time, it was still just a boys band. Really, it was two bands, I guess, prep band and senior band. I love this line here. Lehighton was said to be a town where every boy in sight had a musical instrument under his arm. And that's an article quote from Carl Kulti. He was a member of the band in the probably 1920s. And then it goes on to talk about Blakslee. You can look at these slides on your own. Of course, there's Denny Seiwell with Paul McCartney, founding member of Wings. Paul's band, Sir Paul McCartney's band that he's formed after the breakup of the Beatles. Denny was a class of 1962 graduate. I'm going to zip through here, gang. You can go back here. Peter will share the link with you. There's Denny Seiwell playing in a boys band concert back in 1956. There's Denny. And then here's his great uncle, Irvie Young, who was part of the Young's Bakery of Lehighton, was also a member of the boys band hall. And he went all over the place. And his band was here he is in Havana, Cuba. There he is there. They played a lot of cruise ships of the day. There's Irvie there. Irvie and the Califorinians, they try to have like a West, more of an appeal. Like most of them were all, I can't find any of his band members are actually from California. It was just their name, and they played up and down the East Coast, down the Bahamas, down to Cuba. So they made it sound a little more exotic coming from California. Here's Irvie's band early on. And I'm talking to Denny Seiwell, and he says that his great uncle was a huge inspiration to him. So it's kind of neat. You know, we have this multi-generational people that have been members of the band that went on to play in Wings. You know, there's nationally recognized song with that drum in it, and you can know that man came from the Lehighton Boys Band. The Waring show was a big band. Brian Toots, Toots Bryan, I guess his name was. He was from Lehighton and Boys Band. There's the Waring Brothers Band. These are all from the files of the band hall, by the way. There's Irvie out at Sailor's Lake playing for your lunch. We were members of the band, was member of the union, the musicians union, and you played at different events. And I can remember playing at many community festivals and cakewalks and Thorny Park picnics and things like that. Here they are at Sailor's Lake playing for their supper. Here they are, and just the dedication of the people of the board that supported the band that could do these things. The Hill brothers, Maynard Hill, brother Carmen, of course, Mel, that was a tremendous influence on my life. I cut their mother's grass, Esther Hill's grass on 9th Street. But you can look at this later. You know, they all served in World War II. He went on to direct the first plane that ever made an transatlantic flight, a remote controlled plane. As Maynard, you can look at that yourself. I'm going to speed up here. But you know, Mel was involved with big band his entire life, and it just was remarkable to know people, you know, like Mel, and in the history of the band hall. There's a lot of information here about all the different groups, the Dorsey brothers, you know, all these different branches of the military service, and all the different directors. And there's Coulty. Now it's that's the son, and they incorrectly wrote the wrong name. But you know, the band hall would just be a shell. We wouldn't have this band hall that wouldn't be for the directors and all the ladies auxiliaries and all the fundraisers and things. And we're so lucky to have the community culture of music in our town. And much of it is owed to the people that were associated with this band hall and continue to be associated with this band hall. I'm very proud to say that I'm a former member of it. I'm not so proud to say, well, I'll say this one real quick. My dad and his cousin Nooney, now his dad and parents were on Ray Nooney were on the board of directors for many years until their death in the 1970s. They got the very last 2 seats in the Naval School of Music when they entered the Marine Corps in 1948. And the director heard that they were both members of the Lehighton Boys Band, and that reputation preceded them. And without a audition, they were given the last 2 seats that the Marine Corps was afforded to the Marine Corps in the Naval School of Music. And that's a tribute to the Lehighton Boys Band and Girls Band. But anyway, you know, and then of course the tradition of getting the jacket, you know, and that was such a big deal back in the 40s and 50s and up into the 90s. And this is fellows, there's Damian Walk, that Dwayne Reichert, Mel Hill, of course, Dwayne, Brad Cressley was in one of these pictures. There's Brad back here. I wanted to point them out because they were still involved in Lehighton music. And you know, Brad being a director and his Carbon Music School. And Damien plays at many places, and Brian Hoffner plays in many places, and Dwayne still plays, and there's Brian again. And there's Brian here. Forgot to point him out there. All members of the Lehighton Band. Lehighton Boys and Girls Band. Oh, and there's director Alyssa Schock right there too. And you know, we're just so fortunate to have music in the fabric of our town. And yes, on a little happy, sad note here, I looked through the records, and as far as I know, I was the only person ever expelled. And it's a long story, and Kenny and I are still friends, and we laugh about it today. But it's a long story, and my heart just wasn't in it, and Kenny was right to do that. But that's a story for another time. But we do have a lot of great things, and I hope you take the time to look through these slides. I have many more pictures. I also, at the beginning of the slideshow, there is a link that you can go and read the history I wrote about the band hall back in 2018. Again, congratulations. Sorry this went so long. Thanks for inviting me. Sorry I won't talk so long next time. Probably not. But take care. God bless.